This grease smells like a dead horse armpit. Landon Soot muttered, sitting on the rush matting near the hearth, and trying to work a stiff leather strap for a rusted buckle. I swear the Chandler is rendering down stray cats again. Old Bertrand ignored him. He sat on a heavy oak chair that had been dragged up the mountain by his grandfather's grandfather. On his lap sat a greave of polished steel. He held a piece of pumice stone, working a small circle of orange corrosion near the knee hinge. Scritch, scritch, scritch. "Did you hear me, my lord?" Landon pressed, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I said the fat is rancid, and the hardtack is weevils. Big ones. I named one of them Diedrich because it has a fat head." "Hate the weevil, Landon," Bertrand grunted, blowing dust off the metal. "It is meat. And if the caravan from the lowlands does not arrive by Vespers, it is the only fresh meat you are going to see until the thaw." Bertrand held the greave up to the weak light filtering through the arrow slit. This armor had belonged to Viscount Jerome, his great-uncle. Jerome had died of the pox in a featherbed, but his steel was good. Milanese work, tempered in oil and folded 7 times. It was the only thing keeping the damp of the Iron Pass from eating Bertrand alive. 300 years, Bertrand murmured to the stone walls. 300 years we hold the Salt Road, and for what? So the merchants down in the valley can grow fat on untaxed spices while we eat bug bread? "It is the honor, my lord," Landon said, though his tone suggested he would trade the honor for a roasted capon and a warm pair of socks. The heavy door to the solar shuddered. It didn't open. It thumped against the frame, once, twice, then burst inward with a splintering crack that sent dust raining down from the ceiling beams. Hamnet Kinge fell into the room. He didn't walk, more of poured himself over the threshold, his boots sliding on the slick flagstones. He crashed into the trestle table, sending a pewter jug of watered wine spinning across the floor. "Hamnet?" Bertrand stood up, grunting. His knees cracked, a sound like dry branches snapping in winter. "You are back early. If you tell me you broke a well in the Marker Stone again, I will have you flogged." Hamnet didn't answer. He was on his hands and knees, retching. A string of bloody spittle swung from his lip. He was soaked to the bone, his brigandine coat slick with mud and rain. "Get him up," Bertrand ordered, rubbing his nose. Landon scrambled over, grabbing Hamnet by the armpits. "He smells like sulphur," the squire noted, wrinkling his nose. "Like the hot springs in the Devil's Cleft." Hamnet let out a groan that was half whimper, half gurgle. He clutched his side. Blood, dark and thick, was coursing between his fingers. "Hill tribes?" Bertrand asked, stepping closer. "Did the painted bastards get brave?" "No. No tribes," Hamnet wheezed. His eyes were blown wide, the pupils swallowing the iris. He looked at Bertrand, but seemed to be seeing something else entirely. Just thunder. Lord, it was just thunder. Bertrand frowned. He reached down and peeled Hamnet's fingers away from the wound. Hamnet wore a brigandine, a heavy canvas coat lined with riveted steel plates. It was good kit. It stopped arrows. It stopped a slash from a broadsword. There was a hole in the coat. It was an ugly, puckered thing, maybe the size of a thumb. The canvas around it was charred black. "Landon, help me with the straps," Bertrand commanded. They unbuckled the coat, Hamnet screaming and groaning for his teeth as the fabric pulled away from the meat. Underneath, the steel plate was ruined. It was bent inwards, punctured like a piece of parchment poked with a needle. The flesh beneath was a hamburger of bone shards and torn muscle. "Mother of God," Landon whispered, crossing himself. "What makes a hole like that? A war pick?" "A pick tears," Bertrand muttered. He ran a rough thumb over the bent steel. "And you have to be close enough to smell a man's breath to use a pick. Hamnet, who did this?" "Nobody," Hamnet cried, tears cutting tracks through the mud on his face. "They were far away, by the old Roman arch. They pointed sticks at us, Lord. Sticks! And then the air cracked and Miller's head just turned into soup. Pink mist." The arch? Bertrand straightened up. That is 200 paces. No crossbow throws a bolt that flat. No man can draw a bow that heavy. Sorcery, Landon hissed, backing away. It is the Northman witches. They have summoned lightning. Shut your mouth, Bertrand snapped. Witches do not leave burn marks. This is a machine, a siege engine. They have dragged a scorpion or a ballista up the goat tracks and hidden it in the brush. He turned to the window slit, staring out at the grey, weeping sky. They think they can shell us out. They think we'll hide in the keep while they pick us off. What do we do? Landon asked, looking at Hamlet, who had curled into a ball on the floor. Sound the horn, Bertrand said, his voice hard as the granite of the pass. Muster the men. Full harness. I want the heavy plate. And tell Daedric to break out the sea shields. The big pavises. The oak ones, Landon blinked. My lord, those weigh 3 stone apiece. We cannot march in those. We are not marching to a dance, boy. Bertrand grabbed his helmet from the table. If they have an engine that can punch through a brigadine, I want 3 inches of seasoned oak between my guts and their bolts. Move! The rain in the iron pass was driven sideways by the wind, stinging at the men's face like gravel. The road was a slurry of grey clay that sucked at the sabatons of the 40 strong men marching in column. It was a miserable procession. The men were hunched under the weight of their gear. Full plate armour, heavy mail gussets, and the massive rectangular pavis shields strapped to their left arms. Squelch, clank, grunt, squelch. Bertrand walked at the head. He wore the Viscount's armour. It felt heavy today, heavier than usual. The joints were stiff with the cold. Keep the spacing tight, he roared, his voice bouncing around the inside of his sallet helmet. Overlap the wood. If you see a flash or movement in the rocks, you brace. My back is killing me, a voice groaned from the rank behind him. It was Daedric Kingsot. He was a good soldier, but he had a mouth that never stopped running. The shield is pulling my spine out of true, lord. Can we not just run at them? You can run if you like, Daedric, Bertrand shouted back over the wind. And when that ballista bolt takes your leg off at the knee, I will leave you for the crows. They trudged on. The pass narrowed. The grey walls of rock rose up on either side, wet and slick. This was the throat of the mountain, the killing ground. Halt! Bertrand raised a gauntleted fist. The column shuddered to a stop, armour clattering against armour. Do you see the engine? Landon whispered, peering around the edge of his shield. Bertrand squinted for his visor slit. He wiped the rain away with a steel finger. I see. Madness, Bertrand muttered. Down the road, past the crumbling stone marker of the old border, a group of men stood in the mud. They were not hiding. They were not set up behind a rock wall. They were standing in the open. And they looked like a travelling circus. They wore puffed doublets of garish yellow and blood red, slashed to show the lining underneath. They wore hats that looked like giant cow pies, adorned with soaking wet feathers that drooped over their faces. They wore tight hose that showed off their spindly legs. Are those the raiders? Daedric chuckled. They look like caught fops who got lost on a hunt. Where is the ballista? Bertrand scanned the ridgeline. He scanned the scrub brush. Nothing. No heavy timber frame. No winch. Maybe they are the law, Bertrand said slowly. They want us to drop our guard. The machine is hidden behind them. The men in the motley clothes saw the wall of steel blocking the road. They didn't seem concerned. They fell into a loose, sloppy line. They were holding long wooden staves. They have clubs? Landon asked. Quarterstaffs? No. Bertrand narrowed his eyes. Look at the ends. They are iron, maybe blowpipes? Blowpipes? Daedric snorted. Against Melanie's plate? They might as well spit at us. The enemy waited. One of them, a man with a beard that looked like a bird's nest, shouted a command. It was a harsh, barking language. Birete touche fort! The front rank of the clowns knelt in the mud. They planted forked sticks in the ground and rested their long poles on them. Careful, Bertrand hissed, hunching behind his pavis. They are spotting for the engine. Brace! The men drove the bottoms of their shields into the soft earth. A shield wall. Solid oak faced with rawhide. Invincible. The man shouted again. Hoya! Bertrand tensed, waiting for the thrum of a bowstring or the clack of a torsion engine. There was no thrum. There was a crack, however. It was a sound like the earth splitting, a sharp tearing crack-pop-crack that had the potential to blow out ears. Smoke, thick and white, erupted from the line of jesters, hiding them from view. Bertrand felt a blow to his shield. It was like being hit with a sledgehammer. The wood jumped against his shoulder, jarring his teeth. Splinters sprayed into the air. "Hold!" he screamed, blinking against the sudden stench of rotten eggs. "Hold fast!" Silence returned, ringing in his ears. "Is everyone holding?" Bertrand called out, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Lord?" Bertrand turned. To his left, Yeoman Ogier was kneeling, but he was not moving. His head was resting against the back of his shield. There was a hole in Ogier's shield. A small jagged hole punched clean through the yoke. Bertrand looked at Ogier's helmet. There was a matching hole in the forehead of the steel sallet. Dark blood was oozing out of it, sliding down the polished nose guard like oil. "He is dead?" Landon whispered, his voice trembling. "Ogier is dead." "How?" Bertrand demanded, staring at the hole. "That is seasoned oak. That is hardened steel. No bolt punches both. It is impossible." "I didn't see it fly," Dietrich called out. "I didn't see the arrow. It was just the noise. The thunder killed him." "Reload!" a voice shouted from the smoke cloud. Bertrand looked over the rim of his shield. The smoke was drifting away in the rain. The enemy was moving. They were busy. They were pouring powder from flasks into their staffs. They were ramming rods down the hollow tips. "They are resetting the machine," Bertrand said, his mind reeling. "But I don't see the machine. Where is it?" "They are holding it!" Landon screamed. "The sticks! The sticks are the machine!" Bertrand looked at the fragile wooden poles. It made no sense. A weapon that powerful needed a winch. It needed tension. "They are vulnerable," Bertrand said, shoving the fear down into his gut. "Whatever they are doing, it takes time. Look at them fumble." He looked at the dead yeoman, then at the soft men in their silk and velvet. "We cannot sit here," Bertrand said. "If we sit, they will pick us apart. We have to rush them." "Rush them?" Dietrich asked. "In this mud?" "Charge!" Bertrand commanded. He kicked his heavy shield away. It lay in the mud, a useless slab of wood with a hole in it. "Drop the shields, draw steel. We got them before they can make the thunder again." "For the pass!" Bertrand roared, dragging his bastard sword from its scabbard. He stood up. The 40 ironclads rose with him. They abandoned their protection. They became a wall of moving metal. Bertrand sprinted. Or what counts as a sprint, that is. It was a slow nightmare run. The mud grabbed at his greaves. The armor, so comforting an hour ago, was now a cage of dead weight. Clank! Splash! Gasp! He watched the enemy. They didn't look terrified. They looked bored. 50 paces. Bertrand pumped his arms, his breath tearing at his throat. He could see their faces now. Pockmarked. Dirty. Unimpressed. 40 paces. The second rank of the enemy lifted their poles. They settled the wooden stocks against their shoulders. Bertrand saw the tips of the poles. They were hollow, just black iron pipes. Tubes, he thought. The realization hitting him like a cold stone. They are just iron tubes. He saw the men lower glowing cords towards the touch holes. "No," Bertrand whispered. Crack! The noise this time was louder, closer. Bertrand felt a heavy kick to his chest. It was a dull, massive impact, like falling from a horse. The wind left him instantly. The world tilted. He was looking at the grey sky, then the brown mud, then the sky again. He hit the ground with a splash that filled his helmet with freezing sludge. There he laid. He tried to inhale, but his ribs wouldn't move. It felt as if the mountain had fallen on him. He could hear the others. Dietrich was screaming about his leg. Landon was calling for his mother. Bertrand tried to sit up. His arms were heavy as lead. He managed to lift his head just enough to look down. Viscount Jerome's breastplate. The armor that had cost a year's harvest. The armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. There was a hole in it. The metal was bent inward, jagged and ugly. A dark, frothy red fluid was pulsing out of it, washing away the oil and the rust. Ruined, Bertrand wheezed. A bubble of blood popped in his lips. The inlay is ruined. He heard footsteps. Squelch, squelch, squelch. The fighting was over. There was no more clash of blades, but the wet sound of walking. A face appeared above him. It was a boy. He could not have been more than 16. He had a patchy beard that struggled to cover his chin, and teeth that were already yellowing in the gums. He wore a hat with a brim as wide as a dinner plate, the felt soaked through and dripping rain directly onto Bertrand's open visor. The boy held one of the tubes. It was smoking. He cradled it like a newborn. "Water," Bertrand gasped. The word was a bubble of blood that popped on his lips. "I yield. I can pay ransom." The boy didn't answer. He looked over his shoulder at his companion, an older man with a scar across his nose, who was busy struggling to pull Ogier's boots off a corpse that was already stiffening. "This one is kicking still," the boy said. He spoke the king's tongue, but badly, chewing on the vowels like they were gristle. "Check the purse," the older man grunted, not looking up. "And be quick. The rain is turning the road to soup." The boy knelt in the mud. He put the smoking tube down on Bertrand's chest. The barrel was hot. It seared the leather of Bertrand's gloves, smelling of sulphur and the devil's bath. "What?" Bertrand tried to lift his hand, but his fingers were numb, as if they belonged to a statue. "What is it?" The boy looked at the tube, then down at the dying earl. He shrugged, a small, apologetic motion. "Pipe," he said softly. "Black powder." He scrunched his nose. "Very smelly." He reached for Bertrand's belt. He produced a small, rusted skinning knife and sawed through the leather cords of the coin pouch. He weighed it in his hand. Chink, chink. "Silver," the boy muttered. He sounded tired. He spat into the mud. "Cheap bastard." Bertrand felt a cold panic that had nothing to do with death. It was the panic of erasure. "My sword," Bertrand choked out. He tried to nudge the hilt lying in the muck. "Take the sword. It is a masterpiece. Valeria's steel. Take it to your lord. Ransom." The boy stopped. He looked at the sword. The rain washed the mud from the pommel, revealing the golden lion crest. It was a blade that had defended the pass for 3 centuries. It was worth more than the boy would earn in a lifetime of soldiering. The boy reached out and touched the hilt. Then he pulled his hand back. "Heavy," the boy said. He stood up, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Too much walking today. Leave it." He turned to walk away. "Wait," Bertrand whispered. The edges of his vision were closing in, a soft black vignette. Tears mixed with the rain on his face. "Please, do not leave it in the mud. It has a name." The boy stopped. He looked back at the earl dying in the grey slush, encased in a shell of metal that had cost a fortune and saved nothing. He looked at the hole in the breastplate, then at the sword that would never be lifted again. He looked sad in a dull, bovine way. "Iron is just iron, old man," he said. "It all rusts the same." He walked on, whistling a tune that was swallowed by the wind. Bertrand closed his eyes. He thought of the spot of rust on his greave, the one he had spent the morning cleaning. He realized the boy was right. The rust would take it all now. The cleaning was over. He let out a long, rattling breath and let the weight of the armor drag him down into the dark.